Okay, hello everyone and welcome to Motec's latest webinar. This one is on what is the difference between i2 Standard and i2 Pro. The topics we're going to discuss today are going to look at just a summary of some of the differences between i2 Standard and i2 Pro. Some of those things are going to include workbooks and worksheets, data overlays, datum cursor measurements. We're going to look at video, maths, import and export of data, and how you actually get i2 Pro if you wish to use it. So I'll quickly go through some of the differences between them in summary form. i2 Standard is basically intended to be our data analysis application for the majority of customers, especially those at national level or below in motorsport. You're limited in what you can do in i2 Standard to things such as 15 worksheets, a single overlay lap. You only have simple maths functions. You can only use 5 time distance graphs, 12 channels per each of those time distance graphs, 5 outing graphs, 2 histograms, 2 scatter plots, 1 mixture map, 1 track report, 1 time report, and video only if it's used from a VCS with CAN video sync. That is generally sufficient for most of our customers at the lower end of the motorsport brackets. If you happen to be a professional team, or if you're really into your data analysis, you'll find some of the features of i2 Pro exceptionally useful. The features that it has over i2 Standard include you have an unlimited number of workbooks and worksheets. You have an unlimited number of display components. You can have multiple overlay laps, which I'll go through in a little bit. You can use Datum Cursors, which is a very fast way of analysing performance. You can use any sort of video, which I'll go through in detail. You have an advanced level of mathematics, and you can do things such as suspension histograms. Okay, so they're the main differences between i2 Standard and i2 Pro. There are other smaller differences here and there, but we'll only go through the main ones today. We're going to start off with what is probably the most important one, which is workbooks and worksheets. In i2 Standard, you really only have one workbook. Now, what I mean by a workbook is it's a way of dividing up your i2 worksheets so that you can easily find something you're looking for. In a previous work at a race team that I've done, whenever the driver used to turn up, he would come in and sit down in front of the analysis application and change the layouts of all the sheets. And then when I went back to my laptop, I would have to turn my sheets back around so that I had them the way I needed them to be. So having one workbook was a bit of an inconvenience because we were all trying to share the same worksheets and we kept changing the worksheets all of the time. When we went to i2 Pro, the driver would have his own workbook, and his workbook would have all the sheets laid out with all the channels he needed in the format he needed. He no longer needed to modify the sheets that I used for other tasks. So in a professional team, i2 Pro with its unlimited workbooks and unlimited worksheets meant that you could lay out a book and a sheet very specifically to a particular type of analysis you're intending to do. Such as you may have a workbook on transmission and you may have worksheets on transmission temperature, gearbox, which gear you're in, gear shift ignition cut, downshift throttle blipping, all under a workbook called transmission. Then you might have a separate workbook called engine where you have engine temperatures, engine pressures, RPMs, all that sort of stuff. So you can see in Pro how these workbooks or worksheets allow you to lay out things in such a way that allows you to do your job much easier. In i2 Standard, you can display all of the same information, but you've only got 15 worksheets to do that in and no other workbooks. So you can still lay out one sheet for the driver, one sheet for an engine, one sheet for transmission. If you have a complex car with lots of information, sometimes this becomes insufficient. So this is one of the major limitations of i2 Standard. If you're only doing a little bit of analysis, i2 Standard is just fine with the 15 worksheets. Once you start doing lots of analysis, you'll find that you need i2 Pro. The next thing that is different between i2 Standard and i2 Pro is data overlays. Data overlays are the method by which you compare one lap to another lap to see where you are fast and where you are slow. In i2 Standard, you can only compare your main lap, which is the one you're currently looking at, with a single overlay. If you see in the picture in front of you, over here, there is your main lap and there is your overlay. These are the two columns, so you choose, I want to compare this lap here, which is the 103.6, with this one here, which is the 105.192. So when you do that, you'll see on your screen within i2 the main and the reference overlaid over the top of each other, so you can do a comparison on them. In most instances, again, this is sufficient for you to be able to analyse where you're fast, where you're slow, and to work out how you can change what you're doing to pick up some time. In i2 Pro, though, you're able to overlay any number of laps. So looking down the bottom here, you can see that we still have the main, which is right there. We have the overlay, which is here, but there's a third column which allows you to add extra laps against the overlay. So now if you come across to this part here, you can see that there is a blue line, a green line, a red line. So you can see all four of the, or actually all five of the laps are being shown at the same time. You can see, for instance, the green one's a bit slow through here, and the green one is a bit slow through here. So that is why this lap here, the 231, is quite a slow lap. You can see on this 230, which is the light blue one, that the light blue one is actually quite fast. It's right up the top over here, and it's right up the top over there. So this is a good way to analyse where you're gaining speed and where you're losing speed with lots of laps simultaneously. It's a more advanced feature that isn't used as often in non-professional applications. So i2 Pro has it for those who need it, but for a lot of the guys, i2 Standard would be sufficient with just its single overlay. This is another example of the same thing. So I'm just showing you down the bottom here that you can select multiple laps again. So that's them over here. There's the main here, there's the overlay, and there's the overlaid laps. And over here you can see all of them shown against each other. So you can see in this instance, the green one, a different gear was chosen at this point because that's engine RPM. You can also use the GPS to show all the different racing lines across those laps through the same set of corners. You can use this to analyse which method out of 5 laps was the best method to go through that particular corner, whether it was going wide like this or holding it tighter like that. So the GPS track map is quite a nice way to analyse multiple laps at once, and that's a feature that i2 Pro allows you to do. The next one here is Datum Cursors. So a datum cursor is a cursor that allows you to do a quick check between 2 points on your data. So I'll explain this in a little bit more detail. What you can do is you can move your cursor to a point of interest. So that might be the start of an acceleration run, and press the spacebar. The spacebar puts the green cursor in. So the green cursor is this one here. And that is the start of your area that you're going to compare. When you do that, you get to see what the value is at that cursor. You can then click somewhere else with the main cursor, which is the blue one over here. And then you get the value of the blue cursor right there. So now you can see we've got the green cursor and the blue cursor and their values. If you look at this last one here, that's actually telling you the difference between them. So if you want to find out the difference in speed between 2 points, you put the green cursor at one point, the blue cursor at the other, and the third item here will tell you what the difference is between them. A useful use of this feature would be something like looking at the starts of a race. So you put the green cursor at the start of a race, you put the blue cursor at, say, 400 meters into it, and you can work out what the quarter mile time was for that particular start. You could then use that as a comparison with other starts that you've done to work out which is the fastest start method that you use. It also allows you to look at things such as rate of change, which will allow you to work out what the ramp in acceleration of your engine or how fast you're accelerating in each gear, which is useful for comparison when you have changed engines or increased engine performance. So that's a really nice feature that's in i2 Pro. Unfortunately, it's not available in i2 Standard. So how do you do it in i2 Standard? Well, you have to do it the old manual way. You place the main cursor where you want to see from. You place the main cursor where you want to see to, and you need to write down the values from and to, and then sit there and do your own maths. So you have to calculate, subtract or divide or multiply or work out cursor slope using a manual method. So it's much faster using Datum Cursors in i2 Pro, but i2 Standard doesn't give you that option, but you can still get the same information. It just takes a little bit longer and it's a little bit more of a manual process. And there's an example of a Datum Cursor in i2 Pro. You can see where the green cursor was placed at one point, which is right here, and the blue cursor was placed at another point, which is right there. And in fact, what you can see, it is the difference in braking points. So down the bottom here, this channel here is brake pressure front. So the green cursor has been placed at the point where the brakes were applied in one of the laps, and the blue cursor is placed where the brakes were applied in another lap. So down the bottom here, we can see that there was, and this is just a zoom into what's down the bottom in case you can't read it, there is 0.45 of a second between those 2 points and 26 meters. So we can say to the driver, the difference in your performance between those 2 points was that you braked 26 meters earlier or half a second earlier for that particular corner. So it's a way you can quantify the performance of particular things that the driver may do. The next thing that you can do is add video and data together in i2 Pro and in i2 Standard. This feature has only just been added to i2 Standard. What you can do with i2 Standard is you can get an Motec VCS only, so the Motec camera system. The Motec camera system uses the CAN bus to automatically synchronize the video and the data together. So as you're driving, your Motec dash is writing little bits of information onto the video, and so that when you open up the data within i2, it automatically jumps onto your hard drive, searches your hard drive, finds the video that was recorded at the same time as the data, brings the video up, finds the alignment points, and syncs everything back up. So when you click in a particular place, the video is showing and it automatically jumps to that exact place. So you can see in the example in front of us that there is a car, and this is at the Australian racetrack called Bathurst. So this is where the place is on the track, which is coming out of turn 2, and this is the video of the car coming out of turn 2. There's the speed and all the information from it, and there is the data. So they're all linked together. If I press A to animate, this here will play just like a video. Your dot will move around the track, and your cursor will scroll along in this direction as the car goes around. It's an excellent feature and really good for analysis. In i2 Standard, that is your only way to use video. You must have a Motec VCS, and that VCS must be hooked up on the CAN bus to automatically synchronize with data. If you have i2 Pro, we allow you more flexibility. In i2 Pro, you don't have to have a Motec camera system. You can use any camera system of any type. You can even record video straight off the television, as long as you can get that video onto your laptop and that it can be played using Windows Media Player. We can insert it into the video. So you can use a VCS, of course, in i2 Pro, just like you can in i2 Standard. You can also use a thing called a video sync module, which is where we put audible chirps onto the audio track of a non-Motec video camera system. That will allow us to automatically sync, just like we do on the CAN bus. It's not quite as nice a method because you actually hear the chirps on the video, but it still will work, especially useful if you're using one of the cheaper brand videos. If you have a standalone footage, then you will have no audible chirps. So you have to use i2 Pro, where you put the cursor to the place that you want to insert the video, you put the video and into it, and you move the video till it matches the same location as the data, and there's a little padlock which lets you lock the video and the data together so they're synchronized. It's a manual process. So In terms of i2 Pro and i2 Standard, for your knowledge, the big difference is going to be that i2 Standard will allow you to play only videos recorded with the Motec video camera system using the CAN bus synchronization. i2 Pro will let you to put in any video of any brand of any camera system and sync it up with data. The Maths Expression Editor is another place where we have varied the functions within i2 Standard and i2 Pro. If you're in i2 Standard, you can really only do very simple functions. You can add, subtract, multiply and divide. Often that's enough for you to be able to make simple maths calculations to create new channels. An example here is I've created an expression down there that is going to make a channel called Boost in PSI. And because I've minused 100 from it, it's actually going to show it as gauge boost. So that instead of seeing 200 kPa on the dash, you'll see 14.5 psi of boost. So it's a nice easy calculation so that people who are used to PSI and gauge can actually have a channel that shows them that. That's around about the limitations of what you can do in i2 Standard. i2 Pro allows exceptionally flexible maths. You have down here all these functions where you can do minimum, maximum, cos, sine, tan, derivative, lots and lots of different functions. If you don't find a function in there that you need, which is reasonably unlikely, but there's a possibility you might want to do something special, we even allow you to go out into a special place where you can write code which will create new and customized functions for your particular application. So you can write some Visual Basic code which takes in some of the channels, modifies the channels and puts them back into i2 for you. This is called a function or a plugin, and they end up back within i2 and give you specialist functions. An example of this is you can, for instance, take in all of your suspension positions, write a plugin, and the plugin will then allow you to export those suspension positions into a file in a format that can be read directly into a damper dyno. So that's the sort of stuff you can do in i2 Pro that isn't available in i2 Standard. You also have the option in i2 Pro of getting the Application Programmers Interface upgrade. That will allow you to write any sort of code that you like to import, to export, and to modify data. So the Application Programmers Interface is an exceptionally good way of getting things exactly as you and your race team need them to be. But as you can see, it's not really something that the normal everyday user of Motec's i2 will need. So i2 Standards add, subtract, multiply and divide is usually sufficient. But if you're a professional team and you want to do advanced level maths, then i2 Pro is your only option, where you have an enormous amount of flexibility. Okay, the next thing we're going to have a quick talk about is i2's import and export of data. So in i2 Standard, you can import, you can export data, sorry, in i2 Standard. That's all you can do. You can't actually do any imports of data at all in i2 Standard. If you're going to export data from i2 Standard, you can only export it as a new LD file or into a CSV file, so a comma delimited file. A CSV file is useful for opening up your data in something like Microsoft Excel. And an LD file will allow you to export out the Motec LD file will allow you to export out just a selection of files into i2 Standard that you can open up in another version of i2. So you might, for instance, have gone out and raced around, and once you've finished your race, you might want to download just a section of your log file and give that to one of your competitors. You don't want them to see everything, you just want them to see a few of your channels. So you can select just 3 or 4 channels, export it out and create a new LD file, and when they open up that LD file, they'll only see the channels that you allow them to. So that might be oil pressure and fuel pressure and RPM, for instance, but you don't give them ground speed and throttle position or whatever you would like. So you can give them a subset of your data using i2 Standard. i2 Pro, on the other hand, has additional export functions. It allows you to export to MATLAB, where you can do extra data analysis. So MATLAB has a whole lot of functions that aren't available to users in i2, and it is a very complex application that lets you do a lot of in-depth analysis. Very useful for a professional race team. For somebody doing normal racing, it is not really a necessity. You can also import data with i2. We allow the importing of data from PI, from EFI, or from RacePack. To do this, you actually need to have an activation which allows the import of any of these log files. There's a method by which you need to do this, and it's really made so customers converting from PI, EFI, or RacePack can come over into the Motec data system without losing all of their old data. You generally only need the import for a couple of months while you bring all of your data over from your old data system, and then you won't often need the import after that, because then all the rest of your data will be created on i2 with a Motec data system. It then just allows you to do comparisons of previous years with older data systems. Using the application's programmer's interface, you can also build links into other applications, such as importing from simulation or custom formatted data. So you could go to a simulation creation application, simulate what your car would do with these changes, and use the application programmer's interface to import that data back into i2 so that you can analyze it and compare it to your real data. That's being done by a couple of places, including Pratt & Miller in the US, for example. So there's a few other features that i2 Pro and i2 Standard are different in, but those ones that I've talked to you about are the majority of the features. If you wish to use i2 Pro, it's fairly straightforward. You just need to enable an option on your piece of hardware. So if you've got an ECU or a dash, you can go to your dealer and ask them to give you the upgrade code for it, and then the dealer will let you know what the cost of that upgrade code is, and they'll give you the code. And you just type the code into the screen on the right, which is just here. So you click on Online, then Enable Dash Options, which brings up this screen. Once this screen has been brought up, you click the button Enable New Options, type in the code that the dealer gave to you, and it will appear in this list, your new option. And there is Pro Analysis at the bottom. If you look at your device and you don't have Pro Analysis written in the list, then you won't be able to open your data that is created out of that piece of hardware in i2 Pro. What you can do is you can also purchase an upgrade for your i2 Pro software. If you purchase that upgrade, any Motec LD file will be able to be opened in i2 Pro on your laptop only. So whether that's an i2 Standard file or an i2 Pro file, they'll all be able to be opened in i2 Pro. It doesn't matter from how many pieces of hardware, how many different cars, anything that is a Motec log file will be able to open in i2 Pro. Now, although that sounds good, the reality is this is a license that you pay for annually. So this method is really most commonly only used if you're a dealer. So the dealer can then open any of his customers' data in i2 Pro regardless of whether they have the upgrade or not. As a general rule, if you're a customer who has got one piece of Motec hardware or two pieces of Motec hardware, it's usually cheaper for you to put the option directly into the hardware, because you only pay for it once and then you'll have it for the life of your hardware. The other way, you have to pay for it annually, but it does mean you can get to anybody's log file and read it as Pro. So there are your two options, but I would suggest to you that your real option is only going to be using the upgrade option on your hardware. If you need to know more about that, feel free to contact your local Motec dealer and they'll give you information on the best way to go about doing that. So that's all we have for today's webinar. I hope you've enjoyed the differences between i2 Standard and i2 Pro. If you need to find out more information, feel free to go onto the Motec web forum, which the web address is listed for you right here. And there's an i2 section within that forum, and you can just ask questions and we will answer them as soon as we possibly can. Thank you.